Joining us, MS Now Washington reporter and co-host of The Weekend, Jackie Alemany, New York Times opinion columnist David French, and Washington Post foreign affairs columnist and MS Now contributor David Ignatius. We are going to talk about the separation in a moment, but I do want to get to what's happening at the White House in just a moment. And this is an exception to the European rule, it seems right now. NATO's Secretary General Mark Rutte is meeting with Donald Trump today, and he has been the one person who has seemed to be remained fully on board, fully friendly, or at least has tried to appear so publicly with Donald Trump. What's happening over there, Jackie?
Yeah, Katie, this is Mark Rutte's fifth visit to Trump since he's returned to power. And it even comes all of this glad-handing and these sort of tactics that Rutte has employed to try to keep Trump engaged and committed to NATO after Pete Hegseth went to the NATO headquarters in Brussels last week and threatened troop withdrawal from Europe. Along with a 6-month review of American forces in Europe that the Pentagon is now undergoing. That is certainly going to be one of the topics that the Secretary General is discussing with the president today. We're actually hopeful that we'll hear from the Secretary General after his meeting. He's apparently going to be gaggling with reporters. But you're exactly right. I mean, there are specific reasons why the nationalist right has had a falling out with Trump and sort of fallen out of love with him, from Marine Le Pen's followers being unhappy with Trump's foreign interventionist ventures, Trump and Vance doing little to actually buoy Orban in Hungary, and now with Italy, after Meloni invested so much political capital into the relationship with Trump, all that she received back, in addition to the personal humiliation that we witnessed this past week, was more tariffs to Europe and a strained economy due to the Iran war. But Rutte is trying to keep Trump close and keep him engaged, and again, to prevent him from ultimately withdrawing from NATO. We will see if this approach continues to work.
So, David, one of the most interesting aspects of this is that these leaders are not just moving away from Donald Trump because they personally don't like him any longer. It's really a groundswell of distaste, David Ignatius, for Donald Trump himself. And it's coming from Europeans across the board. In fact, Pew polled them how people in 36 countries view Donald Trump. 76% say they have no confidence in him. 23% say they have confidence. It's not good when they view Donald Trump compared to these other leaders. I mean, he's below Vladimir Putin. He's below Xi Jinping, Vladimir Zelensky, Emmanuel Macron. Maybe those are not so surprising. Only beats out Benjamin Netanyahu, who has really been a pariah on the world stage. Why has the Iran war been such a problem for Donald Trump's support in Europe?
I think, Katie, the Iran war capped European feeling that Trump simply wasn't reliable. He was erratic in his judgments. He leaped before he looked. Europe looks to the United States as a guarantor of security. It looks to the United States as a stabilizing force in the world. And I think they've increasingly seen Donald Trump as a destabilizing force. Trump is seen in Europe as a selfish president. He means it when he says America first, not interested in Europe's security interests and needs, not interested really in sustaining NATO. I've watched the breaking point through this year. I think began before the Iran war in January, when Trump's bullying over Greenland finally drove European leaders over the edge. European leaders who'd flattered him, tried somehow to hold on to the idea of America as the center of a transatlantic alliance. I think the Greenland issue began to really break that. Then came Iran, and now we see popularity, support for Trump in the United States at a really astonishing low.
David French, join in.
Yeah, you know, what we're seeing on the European nationalist right is you're not much of a French nationalist or a German nationalist or a British nationalist if you're going to let an American president stomp all over your country. And this is the giant miscalculation that Trump made, is he has been thinking of himself, and a lot of people in that larger Trump movement have thought of themselves as having all these friends and allies out there, you know, in the European nationalist right. But if you're going to have nationalist allies, you have to treat their nations with respect. And that is absolutely not what Trump has done. And we're pretty used to in this country that there are periodically American presidents that other countries, that people from other countries may dislike. However, if you're beginning to get to Donald Trump polling numbers, then it begins to become a diplomatic issue for the United States, because other democracies are now going to see, the other Democratic leaders are now going to see their popularity rise when they confront the president of the United States. It's going to be the popular thing to confront and to frustrate the will of the president of the United States. That is not in our interest. That is not in our favor. I mean, unless, of course, they're frustrating a stupid decision by the president of the United States. But as a general matter, you don't want a situation where even your allies now are being told by their populations to defy America. In the long run, that is bad for America.
So it seemed for a time, David Ignatius, that Donald Trump was remaking the world order in his image, and that there would be a new kind of alliance in the future. It would be a Donald Trump or a MAGA version of a MAGA party leader in the next round in the future, and then a far-right leader in Italy and a far-right leader in France, and maybe an anti-immigration leader in the UK at some point, far-right leader maybe in Germany, that the world was being remade along Donald Trump's image. If Donald Trump now becomes an enemy to these people, or no longer an ally to these people, what does that do for the future of, I don't want to say the world order, I don't think it's that big, but the future of how the West operates?
Well, I think it's fair to say that Trump did try to create an alternative model of the world order. He threw out the idea prevailed pretty much since 1945 of a rules-based order, strong alliances, strong U.S. Commitment to other countries' defense, and went to what he called America First. He over the last, I'd say, 6 months, that vision of an alternative order has been failing visibly. Iran is a dramatic example of that. Iran has left the world less secure, more vulnerable. For the first time, the Strait of Hormuz has been used as a weapon against the whole world, really more countries in Asia and Europe that depend on oil from the Gulf than the United States. People see that. They're upset, but more they realize they have to make alternative plans. There's just one more thing briefly. Europe genuinely feels threatened now by Russia. For Europeans, the idea that they could be in a war with Russia is a real worry. And they feel abandoned by Donald Trump at a time when they really need U.S. help.
Does the White House support Donald Trump pulling out of NATO if Donald Trump is losing these sorts of friends? Or does Donald Trump listen to anybody at the White House, Jackie? How does he feel about NATO?
He has been deeply resentful towards NATO for quite some time now, and especially after going to war with Iran without notifying any of our Western allies that he was actually going to embark on this plan, and feeling like they sort of burned him in return, left him hanging when he asked for help and military forces from those countries to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, and has still yet to receive the kind of support that he has been asking for. He sort of views it, obviously, as a quid pro quo here. Why would he continue to provide American military support to NATO, to Europe, more forces to Ukraine, if he can't receive the same for, again, the war in Iran? I do think this has sort of been an exercise over the past year and a half since he's taken office in placating him from outright withdrawing from the alliance. And Rutte actually has been successful in trying to slow that down, and even in some of the flattering that he's done toward the president. He has credited him for asking NATO members and successfully getting them to actually increase their defense spending. So we'll see what he's able to pull off today in those conversations. I don't think that this is a topic that is high on the priority list for White House staff right now, quite frankly. What they are still really focused on is getting the Iran war in the rearview mirror, which is not completely materialized yet, and then having that economic impact reduce some of the strain that we've seen at home here and some of the domestic pressures and political pressures that have come as a result of this war.